Well, hello, party people. Welcome to NRW here. I'm your host here today, Rob the Movie Guy, and I thank you very much for joining me here today because today I am happy to review a wonderful action ensemble piece here called Triple Threat, which I'm very excited, like I said before, to talk about here. So before I get into my thoughts here for this film, let's roll the trailer here real quick.
There's a cost to you. Think twice before you continue.
Put it on my credit card.
Remember me? Ends tonight.
Shock and awe, baby.
Do you have any idea what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I do.
And there you have it here. So what you saw in the trailer there, this film has an ensemble cast of the cream of the crop of action stars today in this world right now. And I think if you're very familiar with these actors here that you saw in the trailer there, many of you may know that all these actors have a respective franchise that they've come from that has made an impact without a doubt in the action genre, but for sure in cinema in some way or shape or form here. The film stars my main man, Mr. Scott Adkins here, of course, from the Undisputed Film 2 that I just had a review here on the channel, along with Avengers and many other films as well, too, that I highly recommend you all check out. And it also stars Mr. Michael Jai White of Falcon Rising, of course, Spawn. He was also in The Hard Way, which I believe is also on Netflix, if I'm not mistaken. And you also have former UFC champion Mr. Michael Bisping in the film as well. This isn't his first acting gig here. He's actually done some other roles as well, but I will say that this is definitely one of his best for sure. And of course, Tony Jaa of Ung Bak and The Protector fame, Iko Weiss of the Raid fame, and Mr. Tiger Chen, whom has not been in a lot of movies here, but the one film that I do recall seeing him in was a film that was directed by Keanu Reeves, which is his only directorial effort here, a film called The Man of Tai Chi, which is, I believe, still currently on streaming on Netflix right now. So if you haven't checked out that film, I highly recommend you give it a watch. I think you may come to enjoy it because Keanu Reeves did a really good job in directing the action, and given his background in action, I thought he did a great job. So, Triple Threat here. What was my thought on the film? Like you saw from my reaction in the intro here, I love this movie. I had a great time with it. There has been some comparisons as this being like the B action movie stars versions of the Expendables. This is my thought on that, because to me, these guys are not B-level action stars. Yeah, I understand that most of the mainstream audience may not know who these guys are, but I'm telling you guys, these guys don't make, with the exception of a few, of course, because not everyone has a perfect filmography here, but these guys are the cream of the crop when it comes to top-notch action here. And these guys have been doing it for a number of years, and they've gotten better as the years have gone by. And to me, these guys are like the standard when it comes to what action is supposed to be right now, and these guys are on the top for me. So the fact that these guys have come together to work in an ensemble piece here, it screams like a huge action. What's the word I want to use? Like an action wet dream, if you will. So this was actually a lot of fun for me because, like I said before, I'm very familiar with all these actors here and their work, and I've seen a majority of all their films as well too. So for them to come together, I was excited here. Now, I am going to be doing something slightly different here. I'm going to make a slight comparison to The Expendables here because, again, this film was definitely being compared to the Expendable franchise here. And whereas this film, I definitely think it's not meant to be in that it shouldn't be compared like that. But I will make some comparisons because it has been brought out, and I think it's a fair assessment to make. But let's start off with the major positive here. Like I said before, the action, guys, in this film. The action is fucking amazing here. And one of the greatest things that I loved about this film, which I had a strong feeling they were not going to disappoint here, is that each one of these actors were going to have an opportunity to have a fight that they're going to have with one another here, whether all at the same time or a one-off or 3-1. I just knew it was going to happen because there's just no way that you're going to have Tony Jaa not fight Iko Uwais or Tiger Jin not fight Tony Jaa or Iko Uwais. There was no way that was not going to happen, and to see that finally come to fruition in this film with this ensemble piece here, I had a great time with that. And of course, Scott Adkins in the film, he's certainly the villain here, and of course Michael Jai White, who's also his accomplice, along with Michael Bisping here. All of them are fantastic here. And also another thing that I truly enjoyed about this film is that you can tell that there was a lot more money has been invested in this film because, of course, you have all these top quality action stars here in this one film, and they definitely put in a lot more money to make the best film they could. Granted, it's definitely not a high budget film, say in the likes of the Expendables movies, which have more like an $80-100 million budget. In this film, I believe it has something around the $10 to $20 million range there for its budget. I believe that's kind of the range for what they had to have this film made here. And they certainly have used the money and they put it to good use here. So what else is good about the film? I pretty much said everything that I wanted to say as far as the quality of the action, the quality of the actors in the film, and them putting out one of the best performances in its ensemble piece here. And they left no stone unturned here. Now, the one thing I will say that, like I mentioned before, that this film did great, where the Expendables didn't necessarily hit the mark in most of their most of the films in the franchise, is that if you may recall that I have done a top 10 review of a top 10 filming ranking for my favorite Sly Stallone films along with Dave in here. We were going over some of our favorite films, and one of my favorite films, I believe, is at number 10, was The Expendables 2. The reason why I loved that movie was because it was all of my favorite action stars from when I was a child in one film. And you definitely got a wonderful fight sequence that I thought was really good, especially at the time when I saw it, which was between Van Damme and Stallone. And it was definitely a very brutal beat-em-up type of fight scene. But you can definitely tell, especially upon seeing the film several times, that these men are very old, and they're certainly not going to be able to pull off the same type of fight scenes that they were able to do way back in the 80s and even in the 90s, in the year 2012, whenever the film had come out. So it definitely shows that they've aged for sure, but they did the best they could. Another thing that I was very excited about was the fact that you have Scott Adkins in the film, and he was going up against Jason Statham. That was the one fight that I was excited to see. And then when it did happen, it was very short-lived, and it kind of was just rushed, and I was very let down with that. This film, like I mentioned before, each one of those actors had a moment to fight with one another, and it's not one of those fast edit type of fights. And maybe there was a few of that in certain sequences, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that maybe the actors were injured, and the fast edit was probably the only time they used it to kind of work around that. And I think it was very effective for the film because it wasn't like that the entire film in the majority of the fight sequences here. Whereas in The Expendables, you kind of saw a little bit of that, and I thought that was kind of annoying at certain times. But nonetheless, though, it's something that I was really happy to see in this film, that they really took the time to show these guys' skill set here, and they made good use of it. And I thoroughly enjoyed the film a great deal. Now, as far as some of the negatives are concerned, I'm going to say this here, and again, I'm going to make a comparison to The Expendables here, where this film doesn't really have to do a lot in terms of who these villains are. Scott Adkins, Michael Bisping, and Michael Jai White's character, they don't really delve too much into their backstory. They're just simply guns for hire, and as long as you pay them, they'll do whatever you want, and they'll be happy to do, especially if you pay them a great deal of money. And whereas when you get the heroes in the films, which is Tiger Chen, Tony Jaa, and Iko Uwais, you get a bit of a background with them, but it almost seems a little, what's the word I want to use? It seems done too easy. And what I mean by that is this. In the beginning of the film, you have Iko Uwais, whose wife is killed in the beginning from the shootout that the villains were bringing in Tiger Chen and Tony Jaa to help them find their prison that they had at that particular camp, which ended up being Scott Adkins. But in the process, his wife ends up dying, and he's obviously mad. He's lost his wife and had to bury her, but he's going out and fighting against Tiger Chen and Tony Jaa, mainly Tony Jaa, though. But they have the little fight sequence there, and his intention is to exact revenge on these men, and then he comes to find out that these guys were just actually hired trackers here, not being told false information for them to help in this humanitarian cause, when in fact it was actually just for something else entirely different, for something they didn't sign up for here, and they were in the end wronged. They were wronged as well. So when you have that introduction to the character here, you find this is something you can use to connect with him and also believe in his path and understand where he's going with this here. But then there are parts in the film where he's almost jovial and he's also manipulative in certain scenes, and you forget that there was a backstory involving his wife, and it wasn't until he was making a prayer, talking to his wife in his in these visions, I guess, that he had with her, and then I realized, oh yeah, his wife died. I forgot all about that. So the execution of how I'm telling you these heroes' backstory wasn't done very well. Whereas in the Expendables, because Stallone is a phenomenal writer, he's a great storyteller, especially with just building up the character. I thought he did a better job with those films. Now, granted, not all the films were great, but they definitely had some wonderful character moments that you really connect with. And then the one of the major disappointments in this film that I have to say it fell flat for me was when they came to the victory of overcoming the villains in this film here, where you see them overcome the bad guys, and all three of those heroes here, they're all a lot smaller than the villains. Michael Jai White is a monster. Scott Adkins is a tall, very stocky guy, and Michael Bisping, he's a former middleweight champion. So, and whereas Tony Jaa, Tiger Chen, and Iko Uwais, they probably weigh maybe $150, $175 at most, if that. And they're not that tall either. So there are size differences between the heroes and the villains is very much there for you to see, and they clearly were using their size and their fighting skills, and they definitely had the edge over these guys. So for them to work together to overcome that was a wonderful thing to see. But then when you see the villains meet their demise, it was almost as if though like that they were having this big build up to this fight scenes, and all of a sudden it just ended, and it ended kind of abruptly in a weird way. And I didn't really have that big final victory payoff that I was expecting. Whereas in the Expendables, you see Barney Ross, who's overcoming Jean-Claude Van Damme, and he stabs him. It's for a revenge for him, for Van Damme's Vion, I believe is his character's name, for killing Billy the Kid, and that was a very satisfactory victory for me. And I'm like, yeah, for Billy, motherfucker, like that's what I felt. And I thought Stallone did a great job in executing that and really completing the story, because each film, in a lot of ways, was his own separate story. And it definitely felt like a victory where they all been through this great adventure, and at the end they come back and they're reuniting and they're relieved of all the trouble that they were just dealt with here, and they're just enjoying their time together. And it was very nice to see that. Whereas in this film, it kind of didn't have that payoff. It just felt more or less really flat for me. So that is one of my major negatives here with the film. But it doesn't take away that the film is still not enjoyable. It's still very much enjoyable. In fact, I would go as far as saying that in a lot of areas where the Expendable, I think, kind of fails, this film, for me, succeeded in, especially with the action scenes. Granted, a lot of these actors are a lot younger than the likes of Stallone and Schwarzenegger, Chuck Norris, and many of the other old school actors here. But the youth is definitely on their side. But it doesn't take away the fact that these guys were told a good story. Some areas just fell a little flat for me, and there's no doubt that these films are not going to be perfect by any means. Even The Expendables has a huge amount of flaws. I'm not going to deny that. But this film certainly had the flaws where I thought it could have excelled the most in, and it actually fell a little flat for me. And it's a shame because the director of the film, Jesse V. Johnson, who also directed another wonderful Scott Adkins films in Avengement, if you haven't checked out a review that both Dave and I had done for that film, I highly recommend you check it out, because we really go in depth about what we loved about the film here. And then one of the things that he did great with that movie was really telling a wonderful character piece, and you're seeing the evolution of this character that Scott Adkins plays here, named Kane. And he does a good job in telling the story with flashback sequences, and you certainly see the development of what he's gone through through all the abuse and the agony that he has had to go through in prison, having escaped prison, and then confronting the very same men that put him there in the first place, and then try to take him out, and seeing him telling that story and seeing where he started and where he's at right now, at least in the film, it made sense, and he did a great job, I thought, in executing that story very well. Here, on the other hand, it didn't translate that well for me, and that's unfortunate because, again, he can tell a really good story, but then again, there can be a lot of different reasons why it wasn't executed that well. Maybe there's some scenes that were cut out that could have helped carry the film in the development side of it here a little bit better, but who knows, because the film was about an hour and 40 minutes here, so it's definitely a good, solid action film, and it's well under 2 hours, so I could imagine adding those additional scenes there may have slowed the film down, and I could probably understand why they would not include those scenes that may help expand on the backstory here, because they may just take away from the pacing here, so that might be one of the sacrifices they had to make for the sake of the film. And I wasn't against that idea if that is the case, but nonetheless, I still enjoyed the film, and I would highly recommend you all watch it here. Another positive I almost forgot to mention here that I want to point out is the fact that this film, and I'm surprised I didn't notice it before, but I did notice it when I was reviewing for this video here, that this is a very diverse film, and you're having all these actors from all different parts of the world here. You have two actors, two from England, Michael Bisping and Scott Adkins, and you also have Michael Jai White, an African American, and you have Tony Jaa from Thailand, you have Iko Uwais from Indonesia, and Tiger Chen from China, and all these men from different parts of the world coming together to make an awesome film, and you can tell they had a great time making this movie here. And I happened to come read several interviews with a lot of these actors in the filmmaking process here, what they went through, and they've all known each other for a number of years. Some of them have worked with one another on several different other projects here, so they definitely have a friendship that was developed throughout the years, and you can clearly see it in this film. They just had a blast, and that was something that I truly felt was made with a lot of love and a lot of passion here. And you can tell that Jesse V. Johnson, the director, was very passionate about the film here, because he definitely put in the work to get the story done well. Granted, there are some areas that I thought were a little lacking in terms of development here, but nonetheless, though, it's still a fun film for you to check out. It is currently still streaming on Netflix right now, so if you have Netflix, I highly recommend that you go check it out. It is worth your time, and it is worth the hour and 40 minutes for you to sit down and watch with a group of friends, because this is one of those films that's not very difficult to follow at all. From what you saw in the trailer, it's pretty standard. So it's not, there's a reason why I haven't gotten to the plot too much, because you saw that in the trailer there. So hopefully you guys will get to enjoy it as much as I did. And if you have seen it, let me know what you think there. If you have not seen any of these other actors work before, and this is your first introduction to these actors here, go and check out their filmography, because they have a lot of good work out there that is really that really have changed the style of filmmaking and the style of action from the time they had started, where they really made that impact, to where they are now. And you can kind of see a little bit of their influences in action throughout the years here. So if you look at their filmography, look at the trend of action that has occurred when they made that impact there, and you will notice how things have changed throughout the years, and how these actors, directors have certainly had an influence to some degree on mainstream action these days. So I really think that's very influential that you guys check that out, and definitely look into the work there, because it's definitely worth looking into, especially if you're a hardcore action junkie like myself. It's a lot of fun here, and action's still very much alive, and these guys are keeping it alive, and I'm very excited for the next generation that watches these guys and then pick up that mantle moving forward there. So that's my thought on the film here. I highly recommend it. I gave this film a solid cheers, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And like I said before, let me know what you all think. And if you guys love the film, tell me why you love it. If you hate it, tell me why you hate it, because I'm actually curious why people would even hate this film in the first place. I know it's not perfect, but I generally don't think it's not a film that is worth even hating, because this movie's a lot of fun, and it's meant to be fun. And while you're here, be sure to subscribe to our channel here and help us reach to our goal of getting to 1,000 subscribers here. I've noticed that lately we've had 2 new subscribers here, so we're at 755. So thank you to our new subscribers here. I appreciate your your subscription here, and we at NRW are very thankful for you doing so. And please spread the good word that is all New Release Wednesdays here by sharing our videos here, and hit that notification button as well for you to be aware of any new videos that we have coming down the pipeline here. Because believe me, we got a lot more videos in the works here for you guys to check out, and hope you guys will enjoy as much as we had made it here for you all. And then also make sure to follow New Release Wednesdays on social media. You can follow them on Facebook and on Instagram simply at New Release Wednesdays, and on Twitter, the NRW. You can follow myself here on social media. On Instagram, follow me under as Rob_Medina0585, and on Twitter, RobMedina0585, and on Facebook, simply Rob the Movie Guy here. I thank you all very much for watching the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it here. And again, hit that like button and be sure to share and subscribe as well. And stay safe out there, guys, and cheers.
No,